Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And before you relax, I want you to think about her for a second. Not the version she shows the world, but the version of her that goes quiet. Because the truth is, when a woman suddenly becomes silent, distant, or harder to read, most men assume she's losing interest. But what if I told you the opposite is often true? What if her silence isn't absence, but intensity? Sit with that discomfort for a moment, because the men who understand this don't chase, they observe. And the ones who don't? They panic, they text too much, they push, and they lose her without ever knowing why. Before we go deeper, take 1 second, subscribe and like this video. Not for me, but because what you're about to hear might genuinely change how you see women forever. Now listen carefully. A woman who is constantly thinking about you doesn't always show it in obvious ways. She won't always flood your phone with messages or openly confess her feelings. In fact, when her emotions get stronger, she often does the opposite. She pulls back. She becomes quieter, more controlled, more careful. Why? Because when feelings grow intense, so does the fear of losing control. Silence, in female psychology, is rarely empty. It's full of thoughts, questions, imagined conversations, emotional processing. When she stops talking as much, it doesn't mean you've left her mind. It often means you've taken over it. She's replaying your last conversation, analyzing your tone, wondering what you meant when you said certain things. She's asking herself if you feel the same, if she's reading too much into it, if she should protect herself. And here's where most men fail. They interpret her silence as rejection, when it's actually internal conflict. So they react emotionally. They double text. They seek reassurance. They try to fix something that isn't broken. But a woman who is thinking about you deeply doesn't need pressure. She needs space to feel safely obsessed without losing her emotional balance. Her silence is not distance, it's depth. And if you misunderstand that, you'll destroy the very thing you're trying to build. Now here's where things get even more revealing. When a woman is thinking about you constantly, her behavior begins to split into 2 patterns that confuse most men. On the surface, she may appear calm, even indifferent at times. But beneath that calm exterior, there is mental activity that doesn't stop. She is checking your consistency, your energy, your reactions. Not because she is playing games, but because her mind is trying to determine whether you are someone she can emotionally invest in safely. And this is the part most men misunderstand. They assume consistency means constant attention, constant availability, constant reassurance. But in reality, consistency is about emotional stability. When you don't overreact, when you don't chase, when you don't collapse under uncertainty, you create a psychological anchor in her mind. And anchors are what her thoughts return to again and again. So while you may not be texting her every hour, she is still mentally returning to you throughout her day. In quiet moments, during random pauses, while she's doing something completely unrelated, your name, your voice, your presence can surface in her thoughts without warning. That's what it means when a woman is thinking about you 24/7. It's not obsession in a chaotic sense. It's persistence. It's emotional imprinting. Her brain is associating you with feelings she hasn't fully processed yet, which keeps you active in her subconscious mind. You might notice small signs. She responds with delayed but thoughtful messages. She remembers details you casually mentioned. She references things you said earlier, almost as if she's been replaying your conversations. These are not random behaviors. They are indicators that you have occupied mental space that hasn't been cleared. And here's the truth most people don't say out loud. The more she tries to understand her feelings about you, the more she thinks about you. Because clarity doesn't always reduce emotion. Sometimes it amplifies it. So when you see controlled behavior, don't mistake it for lack of interest. Often it's the opposite. It's a woman trying to regulate how deeply she is affected by you, while still keeping her independence intact. That balance is delicate, and if you rush her or pressure her, you interrupt that process and push her mind away from you instead of deeper into reflection, which is why patience and emotional control often make the difference between being forgotten and being remembered. Stay aware always. Let's go deeper, because this is where most men either gain real understanding or stay stuck in confusion. When a woman is thinking about you constantly, her emotional state doesn't always look obvious from the outside. She may still laugh with friends, go about her routine, even appear completely normal. But internally, there's a quiet loop running in the background, revisiting moments with you, questioning your intentions, and trying to interpret what kind of man you really are. And this internal loop is powerful. Because the more unanswered questions she has about you, the more space you occupy in her mind. Uncertainty is one of the strongest psychological triggers for sustained attention. If everything about you is predictable, she processes you quickly and moves on mentally. But if there's depth, subtlety, and a sense that she hasn't fully figured you out, her mind keeps returning. This is why women often become more introspective around men they are genuinely drawn to. She starts noticing small details she would normally ignore. The way you pause before responding, the way you carry yourself in silence, the tone you use when you're calm versus when you're engaged. These details matter more than you think, because her brain is not just attracted to what you say, it's trying to understand who you are beneath what you say. And when she senses there is more to uncover, she doesn't rush to conclusions. She lingers mentally. That lingering is what creates the feeling of thinking about you 24/7. It's not that she is consciously choosing to think about you every second. It's that you've created enough emotional and psychological impact that her mind returns to you automatically in moments of stillness. You might also notice behavioral contradictions. She may take longer to reply, yet when she does, her messages carry depth. She may seem slightly reserved at times, yet still find ways to stay connected to your world. These contradictions are not confusion, they are internal processing. She is balancing attraction with self-control, interest with caution, curiosity with emotional protection. And while she is doing that, you remain present in her thoughts, not because you are demanding attention, but because you have created a presence that her mind hasn't resolved. That unresolved space is where attachment begins to form. Now, let's address something most men never consider, and it's critical if you want to truly understand what's happening behind her behavior. When a woman is thinking about you repeatedly, she is not just replaying your interactions, she is also evaluating how she feels about herself when she thinks about you. This is subtle, but extremely important. Because attraction is never only about the other person, it's also about the internal state they trigger. So when you enter her thoughts, she may begin to experience a mix of emotions: curiosity, excitement, uncertainty, and sometimes even slight anxiety. Not because something is wrong, but because your presence has created an emotional shift she cannot fully control. And when the mind encounters something it cannot easily categorize, it tends to revisit it again and again. That's where you stay present in her mental space. She may ask herself questions like, why do I think about him so much? Why did that moment feel different? Why do I feel drawn to him but also cautious? These questions are not random. They are the mind trying to bring clarity to emotional signals. And while she's doing that, she's not just thinking about you, she's feeling your impact. This is why silence from her can sometimes increase your presence rather than decrease it. When she steps back, she is not necessarily disconnecting. She is creating space to understand her own emotions without external influence. During that space, your image becomes even more prominent in her mind. But here is where many men make a mistake. They try to interrupt that process. They send multiple messages. They seek validation. They try to reinsert themselves aggressively into her attention. What they don't realize is that they are replacing natural curiosity with pressure, and pressure reduces emotional depth. When you allow her space to think, her mind continues to associate you with unresolved emotional significance. When you crowd that space, you replace depth with distraction. So the real signal that she is thinking about you constantly is not loud behavior. It's internal processing that leads to subtle external patterns. Slower responses, thoughtful replies, occasional withdrawal, and a consistent return to engagement over time. That cycle, distance, reflection, return, is often a clear indicator that you are not just another passing interaction in her life. You are something her mind keeps revisiting, even when she is not actively trying to. At this stage, you need to understand something that separates emotional amateurs from men who truly grasp relationship dynamics. A woman thinking about you 24/7 does not always mean she is ready to act on those thoughts immediately. In fact, the stronger the thoughts, the more careful she often becomes in how she expresses them. Why? Because when a woman feels a deep psychological pull towards someone, she simultaneously becomes more aware of the potential consequences. She starts considering outcomes, timing, compatibility, and emotional safety. So instead of rushing forward, she may appear to slow down externally while her internal world becomes more active. This creates a gap between what she feels and what she shows. And that gap is where confusion usually arises. From your perspective, it may look like inconsistency. One moment she's engaged, the next she's distant. One moment responsive, the next quiet. But internally, she is managing a growing emotional presence that she hasn't fully translated into behavior yet. During this phase, her thoughts about you are often unstructured but persistent. She might remember small interactions, revisit your tone, or think about how you reacted in certain situations. These reflections are her mind trying to build a complete picture of who you are beyond surface-level interaction. And here's a key insight. The more she thinks about you without fully resolving her feelings, the more emotionally invested she becomes over time. Not because she is forcing it, but because unresolved emotional engagement naturally deepens. However, this process is delicate. If you become overly available, overly predictable, or emotionally reactive during this phase, you reduce the mental stimulation that keeps her thinking. On the other hand, if you maintain composure, clarity, and a grounded sense of self, you allow her mind to continue exploring without feeling pressured. That exploration is what keeps you present in her thoughts. She is not just thinking about your presence, she is trying to understand what your presence means to her life, her emotions, and her future expectations. And until she reaches clarity, her mind will continue returning to you, not because she is unsure of you, but because she is still figuring out how deeply you fit into her emotional world. Now we reach the part most men never fully understand, and it's the difference between being remembered casually and being remembered deeply. When a woman is thinking about you 24/7, it doesn't mean you dominate her every waking second in a dramatic, obvious way. It means you have become part of her mental landscape. You exist in the background of her thoughts, resurfacing naturally in moments of stillness, reflection, or emotional openness. And this is where true impact shows itself. She may not always reach out. She may not always express what she feels. But her behavior will reveal patterns over time. She stays engaged, even if at a distance. She returns to conversations. She finds reasons to reconnect. She maintains a subtle thread of presence between you and her life. That thread is not accidental. It's maintained by thought. When someone occupies your thoughts consistently, you don't erase them easily. You revisit them. You compare new experiences to them. You measure emotional reactions against previous interactions. And slowly, without forcing it, attachment begins to form. But here's the truth that gives you control over how this plays out. You cannot force a woman to think about you, but you can influence how long you remain in her thoughts by how you carry yourself during the interaction phase. Men who understand this don't chase validation. They don't over-explain themselves. They don't try to accelerate emotional outcomes. Instead, they stay grounded, consistent, and slightly unpredictable in a healthy way, enough to keep her mind engaged without overwhelming it. Because when everything about you is easy to read, her mind moves on quickly. But when there is depth, restraint, and emotional intelligence, her mind lingers. And lingering thoughts are the foundation of deeper attraction. So if you recognize the signs we've discussed, her subtle withdrawal, her thoughtful responses, her return after distance, her attention to detail, don't misinterpret them as confusion or disinterest. They may very well be indicators that you are occupying a significant space in her mind, a space she is still learning how to understand. And in psychology, what we try to understand is often what we think about the most. Stay aware of that.